Welcome to Middle Math Academy Ratio Tables Level Number 3. If today's lesson feels a little bit too challenging, make sure to go back and check out levels number 1 and 2. We also have levels number 4 and 5, which are ratio tables with graphing. Let's take a look at our learning targets today. I can find the missing value in a ratio table. I can write equivalent ratios in a ratio table. And I can write multiplication and division number sentences to help identify patterns in a ratio table. Take a minute and rate yourself before the lesson. How confident do you feel about these learning targets, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest? At the end of the lesson, you'll go back and rate yourself again. So you're going to rate yourself before the lesson, and then I want you to independently complete the opening problems. Then come back to the video. As I go over our notes, make sure to write what I'm writing. Our first note is ratio tables help keep our data organized. A ratio table helps us visualize the relationship between two quantities. Remember, you can always pause the video if you need more time. We're going to look at this example right here. It says, for every 2 cups of orange juice, there are 5 cups of blueberries. So the 2 quantities that we're talking about are orange juice and blueberries. We're going to label those in the header of our ratio table. Now it says for every 2 cups of orange juice, there are 5 cups of blueberries. So I'm going to label that ratio 2 to 5. And then if I wanted to double our ratio, I could multiply our orange juice and our blueberries times 2, and I would create equivalent ratios. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to multiply 2 times 2 and 5 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 2 is 10. Fill in the next row on your own. What about if we tripled our recipe? Well, if we tripled our recipe, that means we're taking 2 and we're going to multiply it times 3. Triple means times 3. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 3 is 15. Now, one important key point about ratios or ratio tables is that the order is not important. Okay, so we could continue this pattern and do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Or we can take 2 and we can take 5. And as long as we multiply them by the same number, we make equivalent ratios. So I'm going to multiply both of these times 100. 2 times 100 is 200. And 5 times 100 is 500. I want you to fill in this last row on your own. Remember, as long as you multiply both sides by the same number, they're equivalent ratios. Now, we've already mentioned our next note. Ratio tables represent equivalent ratios. Equivalent ratios are ratios that have the same value. They can be written in different ways, but they will always have the same meaning. So let's do a quick example finding the value of our ratio in this ratio table. To find the value of the ratio, we can either look for patterns or we can divide our 2 quantities. So I'm going to take my bigger number, blueberries, and divide it by one of our values for orange juice. So I'm going to divide 5 divided by 2, and make sure you're writing with me. And 5 divided by 2 is 2 and 5/10. Now, a way you can check to see if your work is correct is you should be able to take any blueberries and divide it by its corresponding orange juice and still get 2.5. So let's try another example. Let's do 10 divided by 4. 10 divided by 4 is also 2 and 5/10. So in this example over here, we can say 5 to 2 and 10 to 4 are equivalent ratios. They represent a relationship where there are 5 parts of the first quantity for every 2 parts of the second quantity. Example A says for every 3 apples, there are 2 bananas. So we're going to label our table with apples and bananas. Now we can fill in our ratio table. So we have 3 apples for every 2 bananas. To make equivalent ratios, we need to multiply both of these numbers by the same thing. So I always like to double it first. 3 times 2 is 6, and 2 times 2 is 4. So I added another 3 here, another 2 here. Let's do the same thing again. Let's triple it. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. And you could continue this pattern if you wanted. You could do 3 times 4 and 2 times 4, but you don't have to. Remember, the order doesn't matter with ratio tables. So we could multiply 2 times 10. As long as you multiply one side by 10, if you multiply the other side by 10, you're good. You just have to be consistent. So 3 times 10 is 30, and 2 times 10 is 20. Go ahead and write equivalent ratios for this last row on your own. Now, if you remember our learning target earlier, we talked about writing multiplication and division number sentences. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the value of the ratio. Now, sometimes it might be easy to see the value of the ratio or know what you need to multiply your bananas by to get your apples. But in this case, I don't see a pattern off the bat. So what you can do is I like to start with my bigger number, in this case, 3, and divide it by our bananas. So I'm going to do 3 divided by 2. And 3 divided by 2 is 1 and 5/10. Make sure you have this down. Pause the video if you need more time. Now that I know the value of my ratio, I can write my number sentences. So I know I can take my bananas, an example would be 2, and I can multiply them by the value of our ratio, 1.5, and 2 times 1 and 5/10 is 3. You always want to double check that your answers are correct. So if you multiplied 4 times 1 and 5/10, you'll get 6. So basically, I know that the pattern is I can always multiply my bananas times 1 and 5/10, and that will give me my number of apples. Now, if you want to write an example from your table, I always find that helpful. So we can just use our first row if you want. 2 bananas times 1 and 5/10. gives us what we see in our corresponding spot, 3 apples. Now, when we write our division number sentence, we're going to go in reverse. So we multiplied our bananas times 1.5 to get our apples. Now we're going to divide. We'll do the inverse of multiplication, and we'll go the opposite direction. We can take our apples and divide by 1 5/10 to get our bananas. So our apples divided by 1 5/10 equals our bananas. And then we can write an example to help justify our answer. So we could say 30 apples divided by 1 5/10 equals 20 bananas. Go ahead and flip to page 2. We're going to look at problem B on page number 2, and then you're going to complete the rest of page 2 on your own. Problem B says, every 2 months, a new music subscription costs $11. So the directions here say to use each ratio description to fill in the ratio table, and then write a multiplication and division number sentence. Okay, so step 1, let's fill in our ratio table. They gave us the ratio of 2 months and $11. So we can start there. Under months, I'll write 2, and under cost, $11. Now we can just double this if we want. 2 times 2 is 4. 11 times 2 is 22. Then we can take our original ratio and multiply it times 3, times 4, times 5, times whatever numbers you want, as long as you do the same thing on both sides. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do 2 times 5 and 11 times 5. 2 times 5 is 10. 11 times 5 is 55. Those are also equivalent ratios because we multiplied both sides by the same number. I want you to fill in the last 2 rows with equivalent ratios on your own. So now we're going to look at our ratio table and see if we see any patterns off the bat. So if I'm going from 2 to 11, I'm going to ask myself, okay, what do I need to multiply 2 by to get to 11? I know 2 times 5 is 10, but I don't know what 2 times something is to get to 11. So to figure out what the value of your ratio is, remember, we can just divide. So I'm going to take my cost, 11, and divide it by our months, 2. And 11 divided by 2 is 5 and 5/10. That's the value of our ratio. So I know I can take my months and multiply it by 5.5 or 5 and 5/10 to get my cost in dollars. All right, and so then you can write an example beneath this, something like 2 times 5 and 5/10 equals $11. So if we know we're multiplying our months times 5 and 5/10 to get our cost, that means for our division number sentence, we're going to go the opposite direction. Our cost divided by 5 and 5/10 will give us our number of months. So now we'll write the reverse. Cost divided by 5 5/10 equals our number of months. And I'll let you write an example beneath that there from your ratio table. Go ahead and complete the rest of page 2, then come back to the video. On page number 3, we're practicing the same thing we did on page number 2, except now we have some more values filled in our ratio table. I'm going to do B with you and then have you complete the rest on your own. B says, the table below shows the relationship between the number of songs played and amount of dollars a musician earns. So the first thing I'm going to look for is a row where both of my quantities are filled in. I can see this first row has songs and dollars filled in. Therefore, I can find the value of the ratio. So I'm going to take my dollars, $4.20, and remember to find the value we divide and divide it by our songs, 3. And $4.20 divided by 3 equals 1 4/10, or 1.4. That's the value of our ratio. Okay, so now we need to figure out, am I multiplying my songs by 1 4/10 to get my dollars? Or am I multiplying my dollars by 1 4/10 to get my songs? You could literally just test it out. I know if I multiply 3 times 1.4, I get $4.20. So I can always multiply my songs times 1 4/10, and that will give me my dollars. So let's go ahead and write that in. Songs times 1 4/10 equals our dollars. Okay, and then you could write an example below to justify your answer. Since we already have this one filled in, we can write 3 songs times 1 4/10 equals $4.20. Remember, pause the video if you need more time. Now for our division number sentence. Actually, before we go to our division number sentence, why don't we fill in some of our ratio table? So if our songs are filled in like they are here, okay, we know we can just multiply each of these by 1 4/10, and that'll give us our dollars. So 8 times 1 4/10 is $11.20. Remember, with money, you always go to the hundreds place. So if you plug this in a calculator, you would just get 11.2. But when you go to a register at a store, you'll never just see 11.2 when you're checking out. You'll see 11.20. We always go 2 numbers to the right of the decimal, the hundreds place. Anywho, now we'll do 14 times 1 4/10, and we get $19.60. Now, we know we can multiply our songs by 1 4/10 to get our dollars. I want you to pause the video and write in a division number sentence. Then come back to the video. So if we are multiplying and going this direction, that means if our dollars are already filled in, we can go the opposite direction to divide by 1 4/10. $30.80 divided by 1 4/10 is 22. I'll let you fill in this last one on your own. And let's write our division number sentence. So we know for our division, we can take our dollars and divide it by 1 4/10 to get our songs. And then the example we did was we had $30.80 divided by 1 4/10, which gave us 22 songs. My S got a little cut off there. So go ahead and complete the rest of page 3 and page 4 because we're really practicing the same thing, and then come back to the video. I'm not going to do an entire problem with you on page 5, but I am going to get you started and give you a couple tips. We're filling in missing values in the ratio table, and just like we've been practicing all day, we're writing number sentences. A says the ratio of dogs to cats is 10:8. So just a reminder, if dogs comes first in a ratio description, the first number that's listed will go with dogs. So we can label our ratio table dogs, and our first number will be 10. Cats came second. 8 came second. So the 8 goes with cats. All right, so go ahead and finish the rest of this page and then come back to the video. Last but not least, we have page 6. Go ahead and read our common misconception problem. Answer A and B. Pause the video, come back once you're done with our common misconception problem. Okay, this problem says Jane is making bracelets. She made a table that shows a relationship between the number of beads and the number of bracelets she can make. Jane made an error in one row. What row has an error? What should the correct number of beads be on the row that has the error? So when you're looking at a ratio table, you always want to look at the headers first. I can see here are our row numbers. Sometimes this confuses students, but this is just here so you can see which row has the mistake. So we have 5 rows. Now let's look for a pattern with the relationship between bracelets and beads. If I look at this first one, I know that I can multiply my bracelets, 1 times 40, to get my beads. Let's see if that pattern continues to see if 40 is the value of our ratio. Well, I know 2 times 40 is 80. 3 times 40 is 120. Okay, you would think 4 would come next, but remember that it doesn't have to go in order in ratio tables, so don't let that trick you. Is 5 times 40 160? Well, I know 5 times 4 is 20. So 5 times 40 is 200, not 160. Okay, so this row is not correct so far, and these rows are. But I always like to check all of the rows just to make sure I didn't make a mistake. So 6 times 40. Yep, 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 40 is 240. So the row that had the incorrect mistake, or the mistake, is row 4. And what should the correct number of beads be? Well, the correct number of beads, remember we multiply our bracelets times 40, and our correct number of beads should be 200. Our closing problem says write a ratio description. A hint is to use the keywords for every. So for every 2 dogs, there's 3 cats, something like that, where you come up with your own and write it here. Then from your ratio description, you will fill in the ratio table, and then you'll write a multiplication and division number sentence. Come back to the video once you've done that. So the last thing you're going to do today is answer our debrief questions. In your own words, what did you learn today? Sometimes it's helpful to look at our learning targets for vocab or even the directions on each page. How much effort did you put in during class? Rate yourself 1 through 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And then what do you think is a common misconception a student might make when filling in ratio tables? Once you've answered all 3 debrief questions, you're going to go back to our very first page that we worked on today. And now you're going to rate yourself after the lesson for each learning target. So remember, at the beginning of class, we rated ourselves on these, how confident we felt 1 through 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. Now you're going to rate yourself after the lesson. How do you feel now that we got some more practice in? If you're interested in more ratios practice, we have ratio tables level number 4, which includes graphing. And then our most challenging ratio tables with graphing, level number 5. Thank you for joining us at Middle Math Academy. Have a wonderful day.